We'll try to understand the various parts of the human excretory system and how it basically functions. What are the different functions performed by the human excretory system? Now, first of all, let us understand what is excretion. Excretion is the removal of toxic nitrogenous wastes from the body. So, a lot of us end up confusing it with defecation. Defecation is the removal of undigested food that is present in the large intestine via the rectum. But that is defecation. But excretion is the removal of toxic nitrogenous wastes. Now, nitrogenous wastes. Now, our body, due to during its metabolic reactions, produces large amounts of nitrogen-rich wastes. Now, these nitrogen-rich wastes are extremely dangerous for the body, and they can kill the cells and thus the human beings or the animal. Right now, the primary nitrogen waste that we produce is urea, and this chemical compound is the reason why we call our excretory content as urine. Our urine is rich in this particular molecule called urea, and urea is a nitrogenous waste. Anyways, the function of the excretory system is not just to remove the nitrogenous waste. Its job is also to maintain salt balance in the body, and also the amount of water that is present in the body. Apart from that, the human excretory system is also responsible for the removal of drugs. Now, if somebody consumes, let's say, tea, inside tea we have got a compound called caffeine. Now, caffeine alters the way our body functions. Any substance that alters or changes the way our body functions is called a drug. So caffeine is a drug. It can make us alert, etc., etc. It has many other acts or functions on the different parts of the body. So excess of a drug or compounds that are not desired inside the body are also removed by the excretory system. So very rapidly, let us just see what are the functions of the excretory system: to remove nitrogenous wastes, to maintain the balance of salt, what amount of salt should remain in the body, and also to maintain the amount of water inside the body. There should not be an excess of water. There should not be a very little amount of water. The body should not discard a lot of water also. And also the removal of drugs. Right? So these are the primary functions of the human excretory system. But what are the organs involved in this particular system? An organ system is made up of different types of organs. So let us see the major organs of the human excretory system. Now, humans have two major excretory organs which are known as the kidneys. We have a pair of them. Pair means we have two kidneys. We have this is the right kidney, and we have the left kidney. So we got a pair of kidneys, and the kidneys receive blood. It is very important to know the kidneys receive blood for purification. It is the blood that contains the nitrogenous waste, that contains salts, that contains water, that contains drugs. So the blood from the aorta, I hope you remember the aorta that moves to the lower parts of the body, the same extension of the aorta supplies the blood to the kidneys via two arteries called the renal arteries. Now, this is very important for you to know. Just like pulmonary means lungs, renal, the word renal means kidneys. So, renal artery means the arteries that are supplying blood to the kidneys. Now, these arteries have two functions. First of all, they are bringing the blood for the removal of wastes from them, removal of other materials from them, and also they are going to bring oxygen for the kidneys, because the cells of the kidneys will have to work immensely, right? So the aorta divides into renal arteries. These two renal arteries, each renal artery, the right renal artery connects to the right kidney, the left renal artery connects to the left kidney. Also, the kidneys are connected to the vena cava. And which vena cava is this? This is the inferior vena cava, the vena cava from the lower part of the body, because our kidneys are present below the level of the heart. So the inferior vena cava is going to collect the deoxygenated blood that will come out of the kidneys. Now the blood enters into the aorta, it is in the aorta, it enters into the kidney via the renal artery. Inside the blood is purified, the wastes are removed, and now also oxygen has been consumed, because this process of purification will require energy, respiration, and hence oxygen is used up. Now the deoxygenated blood is moved out of both the kidneys via the vein called the renal vein, and there are two renal veins, the left renal vein coming out of the left kidney and the right renal vein coming out of the right kidney. And then this deoxygenated blood present in the renal veins is drained into the vena cava, and vena cava carries it back to the heart. I hope this much is clear to you. Now the blood has entered the kidneys, it has been purified, and the purified blood has been sent back to the heart. Right? However, oxygen has been used in this particular process, and that's why we have deoxygenated blood also. Anyways, now all the waste that has been collected from the blood, now the blood has been purified, kidneys are like filters. Now all the waste that has been collected by both the kidneys are drained into the waste material. I'm talking about excess water, I'm talking about excess salts, I'm talking about the urea, the toxic nitrogenous waste, I'm talking about drugs, etc., etc. I'm talking about all of these compounds. The wastes that have been taken out are then moved into these two tubes, and these two tubular structures are called ureters, and there is one ureter attached to each kidney. So we have got the left ureter, this is called the left ureter, and we got the right ureter. Now this particular content, the excretory products, are then sent to a chamber, a storage facility, and that storage facility is called the urinary bladder, where urine, the excretory product now is called urine. This urine is now stored here temporarily. Right? Storage is extremely important, because the process of excretion or removal of waste from blood is happening at all the times. Every single second this process of purification is taking place, but we cannot go to the loo every second. We cannot simply keep on passing urine every second, and that is why we have got a urinary bladder to store all that urine. Right? Now the urinary bladder stores it temporarily, and this is a muscular organ. This organ is surrounded by muscles, and that is for a very good reason, so that the urine can be held back, right? Or else the urine will start dripping out, right? So these muscles are basically, they close the exit points, right? Now what is the exit out of the urinary bladder called? It is called the urethra. Now in males, the urethra runs through the penis. If you remember the male reproductive system, there is this long tube-like structure that runs through the penis, which is called the urethra. In females, the urethra is very short and it opens up into the walls of the vagina. The urethra is very small and it opens up into the walls of vagina. So this is the urethra. Urethra is basically a tube through which, or a pipe-like structure through which the urine can be passed out to the body, and the urethra is guarded by muscles. There are muscles around it. They keep the urethra closed when we have this when we don't have to pass the urine, but primarily the muscles around the urinary bladder play that role. I hope this much is clear to you. This particular the various parts of the human excretory system are clear to you, and what are the basic functions performed by them. Now we'll look into slight greater details of how the waste is removed inside the kidneys. Let us have a look into it. Now kidneys are like the filters. They filter the wastes from the blood and then purify the blood, right? That is what their function is. Now inside the kidneys, we've got these structures. We've got structures called as nephrons. And nephrons are microscopic. They cannot be seen by the naked eye, and each kidney has millions of nephrons. Not one, two, or a few thousand, but millions of nephrons are present inside each kidney. And the nephrons are the filtration units, or the functional units of the kidney. This is where the blood is filtered, and how is it filtered is very interesting. Now, what brings the waste into the kidney? The artery, the major artery called the aorta, and aorta divides into two, called the renal artery. Now the renal artery enters each kidney. Now the renal artery, when it enters the kidney, it divides into many smaller arteries, and for those arteries divide into even smaller arteries, and eventually we get the branch of renal artery. So the branch of renal artery, so this is a nephron. First thing that you must remember is that this structure here is the nephron. And now blood from the renal artery reaches the nephron here, this basically here, and it goes in here, this blood, and the renal artery then divides to form capillaries. Now remember that aorta has very high blood pressure, and the renal artery will have even higher blood pressure. Why? Because it has a lesser lumen than the aorta. Now the blood pressure has increased in the renal artery, but when the renal artery divides into even smaller arteries, many smaller arteries, the blood pressure is extremely high. And when the renal artery with such high blood pressure divides into form capillaries, the pressure is so very high that out of the blood, now what does blood contain? What is blood made up of? Blood is primarily made up of water, right? It also contains proteins. Blood also contains glucose. Blood also contains amino acids. Blood contains fats. Blood contains cells. Blood will contain salts, right? So blood will have a lot of these things. Blood will also have nitrogenous waste, urea, drugs, all of these things, they are present in the blood. But through the capillaries, you've studied in your previous classes, through the capillaries, all types of cells cannot move out. Very few types of cells can move out. However, in these capillaries, no cells will move out. But what will move out in these capillaries? Due to this high pressure, water moves out. Some proteins will move out. Smaller sized proteins will move out. A lot of glucose will be leaked out. Amino acids will be leaked out, right? Similarly, salts will be leaked out, and various other things will be leaked out. Vitamins will be leaked out. There are vitamins in the blood also, they will also be leaked out, but not all of them, but a large quantity of that is leaked out. So here, this structure, this part of the nephron, now remember this whole structure is the nephron. This part of the nephron here is called the Bowman's capsule. This Bowman's capsule, this structure here is the Bowman's capsule. Inside the Bowman's capsule, these capillaries, all of these capillaries are called glomerulus. So the capillaries inside the Bowman's capsule makes a structure called the glomerulus, right? And in the glomerulus, leakage is taking place. Why is leakage taking place? Because of high pressure. And what is leaking out? Water, salts, glucose, amino acids, small sized proteins, fats, salts, etc., etc., drugs, and urea, which is the main nitrogenous waste which must be removed from the body. But now, and this is what this is where it all is leaked out. This is the space where it is, all of it is leaked out. Have a look at this place. Okay, once again, let me use the laser pointer here. Please pay attention here. This is the Bowman's capsule here. Now, it's in the Bowman's capsule, and see, there is no glomerulus. Glomerulus has not been shown here. So in this cup-like structure, the Bowman's capsule, the leaked content stays here, and then that leaked content moves into the Bowman's capsule. It moves here. It moves here. All of that content moves across the walls of the Bowman's capsule. And that material then moves through this tube of the nephron. All of these salts, all of these contents that we spoke about, they start to move inside these tubes. Right? They have to travel a very long path. Now you must be wondering, with tremendous difficulty our body has achieved or obtained glucose and amino acids, and salts are very useful, but not excess of them, and also water. We cannot end up losing glucose and amino acid and a lot of water and a lot of salt, right? So what has happened in the first stage inside the Bowman's capsule, a process called ultrafiltration here. Ultrafiltration has taken place. So the first step of excretion is called ultrafiltration. Why ultrafiltration? Because it is happening at a very, very small level, right? So this is ultrafiltration, and very tiny molecules are being filtered out, and that's why it's called ultrafiltration. So the first stage of excretion is, or the first step inside the nephron that takes place is ultrafiltration. But ultrafiltration has removed a lot of content, and now glucose must be reabsorbed. amino acids must be reabsorbed, vitamins must be reabsorbed, some amount of salt, useful amount of salt must be reabsorbed, useful amount of water must be reabsorbed, or else we'll die of dehydration, right? So what happens at the beginning of the nephron, after the Bowman's capsule, during this in this particular part here, the initial part here of the nephron, reabsorption takes place. This is called selective reabsorption. It's not that all the salts will not be reabsorbed, but all the glucose will be absorbed, all the amino acids will be reabsorbed, all the vitamins will be reabsorbed. So glucose especially is completely reabsorbed. What do I mean by reabsorption? Now, do you see that there are these? So the capillary eventually comes out, and can you see the capillary eventually making these tiny arteries? And eventually those tiny arteries are just moving around the nephron, and these arteries are eventually making up tiny veins which are just around the nephron. So what happens is that the nutrients, especially the glucose, etc., it moves outside. Let me use a marker for this and to show you. So all of these nutrients move out now. They were inside this tube, but now they start to move out of this tube, and out of this tube into the space. But this space outside is surrounded by these very thin arteries and veins, very thin, and all of this glucose eventually goes back into these arteries. These arteries are not out here just for any reason. They are out here for a particular reason, which is to collect glucose, amino acids, proteins, vitamins, etc., etc. So a lot of that content, and even water, some amount of water, quite a good amount of water is reabsorbed and put back into the blood again. So this process here is called selective reabsorption. Excess of water stays inside. Excess of water is allowed to stay in. Nearly all the nitrogenous waste is also allowed to move across. Excess of salts are also allowed to move across. Remember now that salts are absorbed in different areas. Glucose is absorbed by the blood vessels in different areas, but we are not going to get into the details. All you need to know is what is ultrafiltration, where does it take place, and what is selective reabsorption, and why is it important. It is important so that we don't lose excess of water, excess of glucose. So nutrients are absorbed back, most of the water is absorbed back, and where is that water and nutrients sent into these blood vessels around it. And then the urine, the excess of water, is sent into something called as a collecting duct. Now here, this is the collecting duct, this long tube-like structure. This is a collecting duct out here. Here on the right hand side here, this is the collecting duct, right? So the urine is now sent into the collecting duct, and the collecting ducts from millions of nephrons. Now each nephron is connecting to the collecting duct. So there are many nephrons that are connected to the collecting duct. Many nephrons are connected to the collecting duct, and the urine then moves from the collecting duct. From the collecting duct, the urine will then move into the ureters. So all those collecting ducts are eventually going to drain the urine into the ureters. And all that required water, the water that has been reabsorbed, all the glucose that has been reabsorbed, all the salts that have been reabsorbed, all the useful material that has been reabsorbed, is sent back into this vein. Which vein is this? This is the renal vein. And the reabsorbed material again goes into the vena cava. This is how waste is removed in the kidneys.